It was oddly like being a junkie again, the ritual, the routine, the habit. Now, I'm saying all this even though the previous tour, when we played the Skeleton Tree album live, was one of the defining periods of my professional life. Just being on that stage every night with that fierce energy coming off the audience. It is difficult to exaggerate the extraordinary feeling of connection. It was life-changing. No, actually life-saving. But it was also seriously punishing, physically and mentally. So when the recent tour was cancelled, the initial disappointment was replaced by a feeling of relief and, yes, a strange and wayward potential. I feel guilty even saying this, because I know how devastating the pandemic was for many people.
From the chats we had back then, it was clear that you sensed early on that the lockdown would be a time for reflection.
Well, I instinctively felt that. I remember feeling that it really didn't seem right to try and do a performance online from my kitchen, or from my bathtub, or in my pajamas, or whatever else it was that some artists were doing back then. All those artless and conspicuous displays of fellow feeling. It felt to me like it was a moment to sit inside history and just think. I felt chastened by the world. I had a weird, reflective time throughout that COVID summer. I'll never forget it. Sitting on my balcony, reading a lot, writing loads of new stuff, responding to questions on the Red Hand files. It's been an interesting time, despite the constant background hum of anxiety and dread.
I remember that we were talking on the phone right at the start of the pandemic, and you said, "This is the big one."
Yes, I think I just read something that really brought home to me the immense power of the virus and how vulnerable we all were and how completely unprepared as a society. You and I, we were both pretty spooked by this invisible thing that was outside the door. Everyone was. It really did feel like the end times had arrived and the world had been caught sleeping. It felt as though whatever we assumed was the story of our lives, this invisible hand had reached down and torn a great big hole in it.
That actually makes me think of the idea of the disrupted narrative I have heard you talk about in relation to your songwriting. How both the subject matter and meaning of your more recent songs have become less straightforward somehow and more elusive.
Well, exactly. My songs have definitely become more abstracted, for want of a better word, and yes, less dominated by a traditional narrative. At some point, I just grew tired of writing third-person songs that told a structured story that began at the beginning and moved obediently toward their conclusion. I just became suspicious of the form. It felt unfair to inflict these stories on people all the time. It felt like a kind of tyranny. It was almost as if I was hiding behind these neat, manicured narratives because I was afraid of the stuff that was boiling away inside of me. I wanted to start writing songs that were truer somehow, that were authentic to my experience.
To your more recent experience, perhaps?
Yeah, which was one of rupture, I would say. Same as most people's. But purely from a personal point of view, living my life within a neat narrative didn't make much sense anymore. Arthur died, and everything changed. That sense of disruption, of a disrupted life, infused everything. In terms of what you and I are doing here, it is difficult for me to go back there. But it is also important to talk about it at some point because the loss of my son defines me.
I totally understand. So telling a straightforward story in a song, however dramatic, became altogether less important for you?
Yes, but I didn't step away from highly visual songs. It's more that the storylines became more twisted, entangled, and mutilated. The form itself became more traumatic. My music began to reflect life as I saw it. That said, the songs on my last few albums are still narrative songs, but the narratives have been pushed through the meat grinder. Ghosteen, for instance, is still telling a story. In fact, it's telling a vast, epic tale of loss and longing.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.